The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Huckleberry Huck Finn is a boy of around 13 or 14 years who lives in St. Petersburg, Missouri, with a cruel father, Pap. Huck Finn and his friend Tom Sawyer find a box of gold in a cave during one of their adventures. Judge Thatcher invests the money for Huck Finn, who begins to live with a kind woman, Widow Douglas. She tries to educate him and teach him about right and wrong. However, Huck does not like this kind of a life and ultimately flees from her home. One day, Pap meets him, wanting to extract some money out of him. When he cannot get his way, Pap kidnaps him and takes him to his cabin in the woods. One day, when Pap is away, Huck fakes his own death and escapes from the cabin. Now, in this story, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, which is taken from a famous novel of Mark Twain, we will get to know further in the story that what happens when Huck sets off down river and the word about his death goes around. As Huck paddled down river, he hoped that Pap would be fooled by his tricks, but he did not care. He had escaped, and for the first time in his life, he felt truly free. He tied up at Jackson's Island. About 12 miles downriver, a passing ferry boat was shooting a cannon, which was supposed to make a dead body rise to the surface. From his hiding place, he could see everyone on the ferry: Judge Thatcher, the widow, Tom Sawyer, Pap, and Tom's Aunt Polly. They all thought he was dead. He felt bad in a way, but he was so happy to be free that he did not care. After that, Huck set up camp on the island. He made a tent out of blankets and caught a catfish for supper. For a few days, he really loved his freedom. But after a while, he started to wish that he had some company. One day, he stumbled upon a smoldering campfire. He was not alone. He was so scared and hid in a tree. He stayed there for 2 hours, and his heart kept on pounding. When Huck calmed down, he hiked back to where the campfire was, and to his surprise, there was someone sleeping near the fire, and it was Miss Watson's slave, who got terrified to see Huck and thought that it was Huck's ghost, not Huck himself. It took a while to convince Jim, Miss Watson's slave, that Huck wasn't dead. It wasn't until he got out some meal and cooked them breakfast that he finally calmed down. Jim had run away the night Huck, he heard Huck was killed. He had not brought any food with him and had been living on wild berries. Huck told Jim how he had faked his death. Now he was rid of Pap and the widow and the money. Then Huck asked Jim why he had run away. He had a family and he knew that Miss Watson treated Jim well. To his answer, Jim said that Miss Watson wanted to sell him downriver in New Orleans for $800. That's why he ran off. Jim's plan was to swim across the river to Illinois, which was a free state, but it was too far, so he settled for the island. Jim was actually afraid that Huck would tell someone where Jim is, but Huck assured him that he would not tell this secret to anyone, and they both swore on that they would keep each other's secrets. Things worried Huck that he did not want anyone to know that he had helped a slave in escaping. He had a reputation to uphold and did not want to be called an abolitionist. At the same time, Huck did not want Jim to get caught. So it was a problem for him that he neither wanted people to catch Jim nor he wanted to help any slave in escaping, as it was against the law. It looked like rain, so they both moved into a cave that was found by Jim. For the next several days, the rain poured, and the river rose higher and higher. When the rain finally stopped, they both found the river filled with debris from the flooding. They captured a good-sized raft of logs, and as they were tying it up, a whole house came floating by. They both paddled out to it in the canoe. In the house, they found some silver coins, a tin lantern, a few girls' dresses, a hatchet, and some candles. In one room, Jim made a grim discovery. They both decided to leave the island, but first they had to make sure that it was safe for them to leave the island. Huck put on one of the dresses and he took the canoe over to the Illinois side of the river. Huck was dressed like a girl and knocked on the first door he came to, and a nice woman let him in as he was dressed like a girl and it was night time. The nice lady told Huck, who was dressed like a girl, that it was dangerous for a girl like her to be out alone at night. She further advised Huck, who was dressed like a girl, that that she should be safe and she should not be roaming outside in night time, as she informed her or to Huck that a young man by the name of Huck Finn had been killed by a runaway slave named Jim. Jim had not been seen since the night of the murder of Huck. The nice lady also told Huck, who was obviously dressed up like a girl, that there was a $300 reward for the runaway. Some people believed he was hiding on Jackson's Island. Huck got out of there as fast as he could. When he got back to the island, he lit a fire as a decoy while Jim loaded the raft. They both set off downriver with the canoe in tow. It was pretty dark. They both tried to stay in the middle of the river to avoid being seen. At daybreak, they tied up to a sandbar and covered the raft with some cottonwood branches. Jim built a teepee, means a tall, round tent, at one end of the raft. Jim put some dirt down on the floor so they could light a fire to cook their meals and keep themselves warm on cold nights. They sailed at night and tied up every morning. It was a pretty good life. One night, they came upon a wrecked steamboat. They decided to investigate and tied up the raft at one end of the wreck. As they snuck, means moved quietly and secretly on board, they heard voices. Jim was scared, but Huck told Jim that they would be all right if they kept quiet. They found some cigars, a spyglass, and some blankets. But they nearly got caught and only just managed to get away. Huck was glad that they had escaped, and he was glad too for Jim that he was with him. Huck was beginning to like Jim a lot. He was starting to see that he wasn't just a slave, but a real person like him. They were headed for Cairo, Illinois, where the Ohio River joins the Mississippi. But it was pretty foggy, and they sailed past Cairo in the dark. Jim was upset, but Huck was secretly relieved. Huck was worried about Miss Watson, who had put up the $300 reward. Huck wanted to keep his promise to Jim, but he was feeling guilty about helping a runaway slave. Jim said once if he was free, he would save all his money so he could buy his wife and child. Then they would all be free. He said if he could not buy them, he would have to steal them. This upset Huck. His conscience began to bother him some more. He thought that Jim was a good friend, but Huck was breaking the law by helping escape. He did not care about the reward, but the problem weighed heavy on his heart. Huck told Jim that he had to go ashore. He was planning to turn him in, but as Huck paddled off, Jim called out to him, and whatever Jim said him, his words cut him like a knife, as Jim stated that Huck was the only white man who ever kept a promise to him. Suddenly, in the dark, Huck saw a small boat coming towards him. The man in the boat asked who was on the raft with him. And while answering this question of him, Huck stuttered. He spoke nervously a bit and then lied. He did not reveal to those people that it was Jim with him on the raft. And then he thought that Miss Watson was right about him, like she used to call him liar and doomed forever. It felt good to be back on the raft, but Huck's joy was short-lived. Suddenly, a steamboat appeared through the fog. And the next thing he knew that he was in the water. He swam for shore and walked quite a way before he found a house. It was a large cabin, a nice home that told Huck the people who lived there were rich enough. The Grangerfords were decent people and invited Huck into their house. Mrs. Grangerford gave Huck some dry clothes that belonged to her son Buck, who was his age. Huck had his first home-cooked meal in a month: corn pone, buttermilk, and corned meat. Buck and Huck became friends, and they had fun hunting and fishing. But from time to time, Huck wondered what had happened to Jim. Would he still be alive? Now let's discuss a few words that have been used in the lesson and their meanings. First word, smoldering, meaning burning slowly producing no flames. Second word, pounding, means beating strongly and quickly. Third word, oath, means a formal promise. Fourth word, debris, means broken and scattered remains. Fifth word, grim, that means unpleasant. Sixth word, decoy, means a trick to mislead someone. Seventh, teepee, means a tall round tent. Eighth, wrecked, means badly damaged. Ninth word, snuck, means moved quietly and secretly. Tenth word is conscience, means an inner voice that tells you whether your actions are right or wrong. 11th word, stuttered, that means spoke nervously. 12th word, well off, that means rich. And the last but not the least, 13th word is corn pone, that means bread made from corn or maize.